already.
Okay, today is May 6th, 2023, and we are at the Stratford Veterans Museum located at 5952 Main Street, Stratford, Connecticut. My name is Greg Sperling, and I'm one of the interviewers here at the museum. I'm joined here today by retired United States Navy Chief Petty Officer Mark Bevans, who was born July 24th, 1957. He served on active duty in the Navy from 1976 to 1980, and then the Navy Reserve from 1983 to 2002. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where were you born?
Trumbull.
Okay. And where did
Actually, Bridgeport Hospital, but
right. Where did you grow up?
In Trumbull.
In Trumbull School. What schools did you attend?
Nichols School, Hillcrest, Trumbull High School.
Your high school years, anything remarkable about those? Did you participate in any activities?
No.
Things of that nature? Okay.
No.
So you graduated, and what do you find yourself doing after graduation?
6 months after graduating, I signed up for the Navy.
Okay. All right. And what was your boot camp experience like when you showed up there for the first time?
It was interesting. You know, some days it's like, oh, this is not bad. I could do this. Other days it's like, what did I get myself into?
And why did you select the Navy?
Probably too many times watching Victory at Sea, combat, Rat Patrol, all in the 60s. Plus I had my father and two uncles that served in World War II, another uncle that served in Korea. They were in the Army. And I decided on the Navy.
Okay. And it was you weren't drafted, right? The draft was over by then, so it was a total volunteer at that point.
Vietnam draft ended May of '75. I signed up in December of '75, went to boot camp on the 2nd of February, '76.
And was it in boot camp that you learned what your military occupational specialty was going to be, or was that determined before you went to boot camp?
It was determined before I went to boot camp. I had a guaranteed A school for aviation storekeeper.
Okay.
If I couldn't have gotten to school, I could have gotten out of the Navy, released from my contract with no problem.
Okay. And where did you attend recruit training?
Great Lakes.
Great Lakes, okay. And then where was your follow-on school?
Meridian, Mississippi.
And how long was that school?
About 2 months, I think. It was a self-paced course.
Okay. And what was the basis of the the schooling? What is it that you learned or prepared you to do?
Aviation storekeepers are responsible for ordering, issue, storage, receiving aircraft parts, aircraft supplies, flight gear, financial reporting, and about a half a dozen other things that I can't remember anymore.
Okay. And where was your first duty station after you finished school?
I was assigned to Attack Squadron 97 based out of NAS Lemoore, California. We flew A-7 Corsair IIs.
And how long were you at that location?
I went directly to the ship 3 days before we departed for the 1976 to 1977 Westpac cruise. They asked the second-class storekeeper if they wanted me to come to Lemoore or come to the ship. He said, send them to the ship. And it turned out that there were 7 of us in the squadron. And because I was a non-rate, they tried to keep me, but as soon as the ship found out that there were 7 storekeepers in this squadron, automatically went TAD to the ship. So I worked in the ship supply, working in awaiting parts unit, where we received a broken part from the work center, ordered the parts to fix it, stored everything until we had everything, and then we delivered it back to the work center for installation back on the aircraft.
Okay. And on your Westpac float, where in particular did that cruise take you?
Hawaii, the Philippines, Mombasa, Kenya, Australia, Singapore. We were off Guam, we were off Pakistan in the Indian Ocean. We were near Diego Garcia for a little while.
Right. What was life like on the ship?
tiring because you were working 12-hour days. It's basically eat, work, sleep.
And is it like it shows in the movies and everything where you have very limited space?
Oh yeah.
Or you're sharing your living space with a bunch of guys?
You have a little tiny locker that's maybe 3 feet tall, about 6 or 8 inches wide, plus your bed lifts up and that's your locker underneath. Or on the Enterprise, we had lockers that were built into the center of the bunk, so they were a little bit bigger. But storage was tight.
And did you have your own bunk, or did you have to, you know?
No, you had your own bunk.
Okay. Because you hear stories of, you know, the 12 hours you're on, somebody's sleeping in your bed, and then you come back and...
No, we had our own bunk.
Well, that's good.
My bunk was the bottom bunk, which was nice because I could just roll right into it and then out. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't know nothing. You get used to aircraft coming in overhead and landing because our berthing was on the O3 level aft, right under the stern. So you hear the jets coming in and scream and hit the deck. Buffers are running, radios playing, people talking, doors slamming, people walking back and forth. You're out.
Did it take you long to be able to sleep like that, or was it something just you were exhausted from your 12-hour shift?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
You take a shower and then crash. Get up, eat chow, go to work.
What other activities did you have on the ship, if any?
Well, like you see on TV, some guys would do anything to break the monotony. They would take up guitar playing, or one guy was lassoing a 5-gallon bucket. Or you'd read books from the ship's library, or they had TV there you could watch. Pretty much anything you could do to just keep yourself from going nuts or bored out of your mind.
Right.
But when you're 18, 19 years old, running up and down ladders in and out of storerooms all day, you could do that stuff. It didn't bother you.
During that deployment, did the ship ever come into any type of hazardous situation?
No.
No? No combat operations or anything like that?
No, it was peacetime.
Okay.
And Enterprise is 90,000 plus tons, so there's not much you can do to it.
And how many are on that ship?
About 6,000 when Air Wing's on board.
All right.
We have like 12 squadrons on board.
Okay. How was the food like?
Food was good. You were hungry, you ate it. You know, you had no choice. There was nothing like, oh, give me this and that and that, and you know, so whatever they had.
Right.
You know, we were at sea one time in the Indian Ocean. We had roast beef and instant mashed potatoes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because we were at sea for so long, and they were at the very bottom of the reefers. So that's all you had.
Right.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Grab a couple pieces of fruit. Some guys did.
Yeah.
Whatever you had.
Okay. And when you're on your deployment on the ship, how did you keep contact with your family?
We wrote these things called letters. There was no email. There was no computers. At least not for everybody else. There were no cell phones. You wrote a letter. And it would take maybe 2 months before you got a reply back. Or maybe you got a care package in the mail. Cookies or whatever your mom or your wife or girlfriend or whoever baked for you.
Okay.
Stale or not, you ate them.
Of course. So, all right. So now your deployment's over and you're back stateside. Where are you going now?
I occupied basically a permanent TAD billet. We got to the ship, I went to ship supply. We got back to Lemoore, I went to the base supply department.
And how long were you in that capacity, that job?
Until we deployed again.
Okay. And so during your active duty years, from the 4 years of 76 to 80, how many deployments did you go on? I
did 2 cruises on the Enterprise and 3 or 4 months on board the Coral Sea.
Okay. And were they Westpac floats every time? Mm-hmm. Okay.
When I was in A school, you fill out what's called a dream sheet, where you list where you would like to go. Base, squadron, ship, unit. And depending upon the needs of the Navy, you might get it. I put in for NES Oceania because I was interested in going into Med, maybe going to England. Instead, I went the other way. I went to California, which worked out good in the long run because we went to PI, and that's where I met my wife.
Okay.
And we were married for 43 years.
Okay. So on one of your floats, you're out obviously in the Philippines, and tell us how you met your wife.
I was out on Liberty, and we decided to just stop in this bar because the main street in Alonga Post City, which is right outside Subic Bay Naval Base, is about 4 blocks long, full of bars and everything for the sailors and the military. And then we just stopped in one of them. She was working there, and that was it.
Rest is history.
Yeah.
And how long did it, was she able to come to the States right away, or how long was
it? It took about a year before she was able to come.
Okay. So you're married there, she's staying in the Philippines while you're still on your float?
We got married. At that time, it was illegal to marry a foreign national. But we did it anyway, under the table, and a few other guys did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You kept it hush, hush, quiet. And about a year later, the squadron found out. And I got called in with the squadron legal officer, and I was his first case of that, so he was learning, I was learning, and the maintenance warrant officer that I worked for, and the master chief, they're laughing. The guy's married a year already. What are you going to do? Let it go. So they did.
Okay.
They told me if I didn't get into trouble, the entire investigation would be locked up in the squadron safe, will be destroyed when we got back to Lemoore. I says, no problem. I thought I was going to lose my crow because I just made E4 at the time. Okay. I was going to go into the brig. I don't know what was going to happen. So they were very, very understanding and lenient.
Good.
The next guy, however, who knows?
Right. So then you're back in California, and does your wife get to the States before your active duty time is over? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was working on base supply when I got it was either a letter or a phone call from her saying, I'm coming in on such and such a time. So I told my boss, I got to go to the airport and everything, pick up my wife. Okay, go ahead. So I drove and picked her up, and brought her back to the apartment I had out in town.
Okay. All right. And how much longer, when she got there, were you on active duty?
About 2 more years.
Okay. But that was all base side? You didn't deploy again once your wife came?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. She was here maybe 6 months, 8 months or whatever before I deployed again.
Okay.
She just barely started figuring everything out when away I went.
Okay. And so, 1980 rolls around, and what's the thought process of getting out, staying? What helped to make that decision?
They were supposed to come around like 6 months ahead of time and start pinging on you to re-up. They never did. I had a new daughter, born in September of '79. My thoughts are on raising a family. I didn't want to go active anymore. So I had 2 years inactive reserve per my 6-year enlistment. And I was discharged from the reserves in December of '81. And then I re-enlisted in the reserves active in September of '83. Okay. I missed it. I decided to go back.
Okay. And when you got out of active duty in California, and you were up with your first 4 years, did you move back to Connecticut? Did you stay? You moved back to Connecticut.
We came back here to Connecticut, and we stayed with my parents for a while.
Okay.
Until we got a house in Bridgeport.
And what were you doing for work at that point?
In March of 1980, I was hired by Sikorsky Aircraft.
Okay.
I started out in a machine shop. Then I heard of opening in the main stock room. I said, good. I was a storekeeper. Stock room. Boom. Went down there and started working in there. I started working for them. I worked 2 years in the presidential aircraft program, and I did tool control in the various tool rooms, issuing out supplies for the people that worked on the aircraft. Paint guns, rivet guns, wrenches, hammers, gloves, tape, whatever they needed to work on the aircraft. I would also order it, supplies. I stocked the shelves. It's just like working a store on a ship.
Right. And a few years into this, you got the calling to head back to the Navy. Mm-hmm. What prompted that decision, or those feelings, I should say?
I just said, I want to go back in. I'll go in the reserves.
Yeah.
You know, I could travel some more, maybe make. Always you could use the money.
Mm-hmm. And what reserve unit did you attach to?
I was initially, because I was aviation, I was assigned to a unit up in South Weymouth near Boston. I was allowed to drill at New Haven. I was initially assigned to AS-18 Orion 101, which is a reserve unit for a submarine tender based in Lomata, Italy, on the island of Sardinia, because they had no supply people. I said, okay, I did that. I initially did it for 2 years. And then they said, they came out with the announcement that if you were aviation in a non-aviation unit, you were not getting paid. I said, okay, I'll do my 2 years, what I had left of it, and get out. Then the yeoman said, hey, the Seabees are looking for storekeepers, bad. And he looked up the requirements, and they're identical. Aviation storekeepers have a little bit more forms and publications that we had to know, but it was a direct conversion. So I dropped my wings, kept my keys. I went into R&M CB-12, which is a reserve unit based out of Davisville, Rhode Island, and went from there. I did that for 11 years until the unit was decommissioned.
Okay. During those 11 years, did we any deployments?
Only for annual training.
Okay. And where did you normally go for those, or was it different locations every time?
I did 3 years in a row in Davisville, which was all right because I could come home on a weekend. Fort Benning, Georgia. Fort McClellan, Alabama. I did a training school in California. Where else did we go? The rest I can't remember. A few other schools here and there.
And when did you pick up chief? When were you promoted?
October the 20th of 1990. There were 6 of us that made chief. We were the last ones to make it in the battalion before they decommissioned.
Okay.
And then they closed Davisville after that. We were drilling at Reserve Center, New Haven. Again, there were like 7 storekeepers in this one deck. And Davisville was short-handed on storekeepers. We only went out there once a quarter. Once they found out that there's 7 storekeepers in this deck, they cut us orders every month to go to Rhode Island. When we drilled at the Reserve Center, the active duty storekeeper was all by himself. So he would show up on the weekends. One of my guys, because I was a second class, then the first class at that time, give me the keys to everything. And we did ordering, we did financials, we did everything for him. He was just there in case we had a problem. You take a break on the weekends.
Good. And what prompted the decision to retire and not just continue to go in the reserves?
High year tenure got me.
Okay.
It was either do points, correspondence courses at the Reserve Center for points, go to a volunteer training unit, which is non-pay, which at that time I wasn't too concerned about. I was in it because I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
The training, the travel, the people. It would have been iffy if I could have stayed with the unit I was assigned to, which at that time was a supply unit up in Plainville, Connecticut. It would have been iffy if I could have gone on active duty, because the money comes out of a different pot. So I says, okay, I'll just retire. And I did.
Okay. And then your entire time during the reserves, you're still working your full-time job at Sikorsky?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. And obviously Sikorsky supported your military time off and the things that you needed to do, as most employers do.
When Desert Storm started, they gathered everybody that they could find that was in the military. And if you filled out all the paperwork for pay, and they held on to it, it says, you get activated, give us a call, we'll drop it in the system, you're going to get paid your regular pay minus your 10% for working nights. But it never happened.
Okay.
Desert Storm was over too quick.
Absolutely. And so this time, or you're living in Bridgeport, when did you move to Stratford?
We moved to Stratford in July of 1993. We had a new house built.
post your active duty time, did you ever utilize a GI Bill? Did you? No, didn't use that. Okay.
I did it for a couple courses, but working full time, and I had 2 daughters, raising a family, it just got to be too much. I just, nah, forget it. Okay. Plus the math that I had to do killed me. I couldn't do that.
What about your military buddies? Do you keep relationships? Do you have friends that you have from your military years that you keep in contact with?
Yeah, there's a couple chiefs I know, a few chiefs I know, and some other guys. Mostly now it's just emails from time to time.
Yeah. Okay. Any reunions or anything like that?
The Seabees have a reunion every year out in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I'll probably go to that one again this year.
All right. And what about fraternal organizations, American Legion, anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am a life member of the American Legion, VFW 9460 in Stratford. Okay. The NMCB Association, I'm a life member of that. I'm a plank owner of the Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C. Plus I donate to a few other organizations from time to time.
And you just pretty much came on staff here with the Veterans Museum, or getting involved, I should say,
yeah,
with the Stratford Veterans Museum. You'll be sitting here one day interviewing some vet. Is there anything about your military or life experiences that we haven't talked about that you think are as important for your future generations to hear when they see your video years from now?
Future generations, if you want a job that's going to pay you from day one with 100% medical, dental, housing, uniforms, education, training, go for it. Join the military. You may not ever see combat. You might see combat. You never know, but it's worth it. And you retire. You can retire at 20 years. What other job is going to let you retire with full benefits at 20 years? I have 43 years at Sikorsky. I just retired at the end of March of this year.
All right, thank you. Thanks for joining us today and telling us your story.